Have two of you? No. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Deserves some kind of medal for executing the many elements involved in this show's unusual installation. Thanks are also due to Laura McManus, Danny Schreffler, and Megan Gusick of the Maier staff, and to the donors who have made this exhibition possible, Sally Mayer Rowe and Nancy Gotwald. I offer a special thank you as well to my colleague Leslie Shipley for the help she gave me in contextualizing some aspects of the exhibition, and to Dwarvick Mack for his technical support. Ms. Harper's exhibition reminds us that history is a process and that history can change according to the questions we ask and the information we seek. Having inherited old family heirlooms, Cheryl Harper looked for answers about their past, and in her research discovered that her husband's lineage goes back to Isaac Lassane, a plantation owner in colonial South Carolina. In Passages, Harper responds to the revelation that her husband's ancestors were enslavers, and she contrasts this legacy with that of her family, Eastern European Jews who were among the oppressed. Harper's exploration of her personal history resonates with current issues around us. During this past year, an effort has been made to refocus the narrative of our country's history. The New York Times began the 1619 project on the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Africans to this continent, to our very own state of Virginia. The project redirects the beginning of the story of our country to that moment, so that the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans are central to the narrative. Harper's installation urges us to remember, as did the events held recently to mark the 75th anniversary of the closing of the Auschwitz concentration camp. Many of Harper's relatives either fled Eastern Europe or were killed there during the Holocaust. The number of material goods handed down in her family is consequently quite small. Precious among these objects is a hand-cut mizrah made by her great-great-uncle in Europe and brought to this country by his brother. You will see the imagery of this Jewish art form echoed in Harper's printed wallpaper displayed in the next room. Ms. Harper holds an MFA in printmaking from the University of Delaware and an MA in art history from Temple University. Her work has been shown in invitational, one-person, and juried shows of national and international scope. Among her awards are the Fleischer Challenge Prize and grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Ms. Harper is also an independent curator and has developed exhibitions for a variety of academic and gallery venues. For this work, she has enjoyed the support of the Pew Charitable Trust. Currently, she has an exhibition on view at Rutgers University called Seamless. Passages contrasts the legacy of Harper's husband's ancestors from the Southern plantation with the story of her family history. It has made me think about the other families in this story, the enslaved who lived and worked on the Lassane plantation. Bringing the Passages exhibition to Randolph has given the Museum and Heritage Studies seniors the opportunity to explore what can be known about the enslaved families. For their capstone project, the seniors are developing an exhibition based on artifacts excavated from the Lassane plantation. It will be on view in Lipscomb Library at the end of March. The seniors are already fulfilling Ms. Harper's hope that experiencing the Passages installation will inspire visitors to engage in dialogue about the lasting impact of the past and how it influences their role in forming the present and the future. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl Harper.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and I also have a few thank yous I want to address before I begin my talk. I want to thank Dr. Andrea Campbell, Professor of Art History, for her insight into why my project would be welcome at Randolph College. To Martha Johnson, the Director of the Maier Museum, who shared her vision, and to John and Debbie Spanish, who were integral in making the installation come to fruition. Once I arrived with many boxes, as well as Laura McManus and other staff members. I want to thank my family who has indulged my curiosity about their histories. So why these subjects involving a peculiar institution known as slavery and a final solution known as the Holocaust? And what is the legacy of the oppressed? Where do plantation owners and the National Socialist Party fit into my family history? The oppressors. How did these terms come together in this work, and why? There are references in this show to the Middle Passage, slavery, European immigrants arriving in the United States with nothing but a sack, those who escaped religious persecution, and those who were trapped in cultures that dehumanized them and who met their deaths in inconceivable horror. Passage is about all of this and the lifestyles provided to those who profited from enslaving or erasing their neighbors. While the oppressors succeeded until it could not be sustained, the oppressed survived with legacies that we can confront and discuss through visual vocabulary, writing, and dance. I married into a middle-class, nominally Christian family that I slowly understood had a maternal side with deep Southern roots. With deep Southern roots of wealth and privilege. My husband married into a family who carried deep suspicions they would not be welcome. But that was not the case. We all embrace our different backgrounds with respect and humor. So as an artist, I think I want to start with this exhibition that I had in 1993 in Philadelphia. And you can see that I'm working in this very large scale with prints that are 10 feet high, that are 10 feet high and 8 feet high. And I'd like you to notice the symbolism of the predator-prey imagery, and also over here, I'm using some of the exact same images. So in my work, I often come back to older themes and imagery because it's just something that's been with me a very long time. You're like old friends. So this is from 2014, kind of fast forwarding, where I started to get interested in the small installations. And this was a series that was well received in Philadelphia about still lives. That's sort of, if you're familiar with, I think you have one in your wonderful collection here, of like a 17th century still life, where the symbolism tells us that life is brief, and that symbolism goes back to the Roman era, actually. So it's called vanitas. What I decided to do was to update vanitas, which a skull is a symbol of that, to junk food. And so I hung out at my local 7-Eleven and I bought a lot of junk food, and I unwrapped it and I took photographs of it, and I made it in clay and made some furniture, some help, and added some prints. And so, as I said, people really got this. I think the title of the big review in Philadelphia was, Cheryl Harper, visits the 7-Eleven and, comes back with art. And this is another one of that series. This is hanging on a wall, and you can see I'm using fabric with embellishment, with the symbolism of butterflies, dragonflies, just symbolism in these early still lives of brevity of life. But I've also borrowed this concept of the tipped glass that you see in those paintings, but I'm adding a drumstick, ice cream, and then I used Hostess, Twinkies and ho-hos and butterflies to kind of bring that idea home. This is another example of an installation that I did on a circa 1900 warship that's docked in Philadelphia called the Olympia. And each artist who was invited or juried into the show, we got to select a room in the ship. And I selected the officer's washroom. And we had to use some sort of historic research in our installations. So what I did was I was imagining all of these officers. They were very fussy about their hair. Men had these handlebar mustaches and beards, and they were setting an example for the enlisted sailors. So I imagine them all crowded. And here's a problem I had to solve was the walls are made out of steel. Okay, so how do you hang anything on walls that are made out of steel? Well, I made magnets. I hung it in mylar. We lined the walls with mylar so that we get all these crazy reflections. And then I made about 200 ceramic mustaches that you can see here as a way, with magnetic backings, as a way to hang the wallpaper. And this is a really small room, and it was like 90 degrees, and it was not air conditioned, and it had its challenges, to say the least. And then I have a, yes, and this is a detail of the kinds of materials that I was working with so I made these pastiches of products that the men would have used, and it was just, a lot of fun and certainly well received. So now we get back to this family, these family material culture, these objects. So what you're seeing on the right is 3 objects. Let's see if I can do this. Oops, sorry. I know there's a pointer here somewhere. Okay, right here. So this object, and this object are in the case in the gallery. And my mother-in-law had passed away, and there were boxes and boxes of things, and the 2 attics that they had, and 2 basements, but most of these things were in the attics or in this this corner cabinet. And the corner cabinet has been in the family since or at least 1800 as far as we can tell. And you can see there are some objects that we can find here. I think they're down here, these same little objects that you see here, I think are here. And my mother-in-law never told us anything about any of this. It's just like, some family things. But, my sister-in-law is here, and I think she can also attest to, she didn't talk about this stuff. It was just in this corner cabinet. So once we agreed with my wonderful sisters-in-law, we discussed, that this would land in my house, which is sort of a tradition in the family that daughters-in-law seem to have ended up with this cabinet. My next, as a researcher, I was like, well, who owned what in this cabinet and when? And these things that you see here, there's many silver objects that are more Victorian in period, and this piece I found up in one of the attics, tarnished to black. I mean, there was like nothing, it was just totally black. But the shape of it was really intriguing to me. So I thought, well, I wonder what it is. And I started researching, and I'm looking online for things that look like it. I thought maybe it's Victorian, maybe it's silver plate, not very valuable. And, I'm not finding anything. So I thought, maybe I need to go earlier. Well, it turns out that these 3 objects date in the late 1700s. And it's like, well, why would we have that? I had no idea. And also, these things also date from around the same period. These are tea canisters. So it's speaking to a tea culture. This is a water urn. It's not a coffee urn. It's just for hot water. If you were making tea, you would have a hot water urn and then a sugar and creamer. So this is the same corner cabinet a generation earlier with another, my husband's grandmother. And you can see that the corner cabinet looks like it contains different things. So it's like, okay, if I could find some way to compare what was in this cabinet to what was in this cabinet, then, I might be able to figure out who owned what. And she's holding this rug, this grandma is holding this rug, because she made about 100 of these. She was a hook rug, hobbyist. So there are many of these in the family as well, and she usually signed them. So when this cabinet was moved to my house, a sheet of paper literally flew out of the cabinet. I was like, wow, this is really weird. Well, it turned out that it was this lady holding the rug. It was her inventory of everything that was in that cabinet when she owned it. So it's like, aha, eureka moment. So if it's not on her list, then it has to come from the other side of the family. That was my theory. So I wrote an article about it. Let's see, notes from the field, where I covered Spill's family history, and we went through the process and how I came up with the conclusions that I came up with. And so that was, my husband's family. We still didn't know a lot about the objects. We just kind of determined, okay, this had to come from the other side. These are objects from my family, the Jewish side, and these were Sabbath candlesticks. They date back to probably the 1890s, and this comes from one side of my family, and then this comes with the plate behind it comes from immigrants, probably 2 generations later. I just happen to have them both, but they weren't originally, they did not go together. And in fact, this was so, if you can see right here, this was so regularly used that the brass has literally just melted through. They can't really be used, for that purpose anymore. But they are family objects, but they were very, regularly used. So now we come down to this other piece of my Jewish side that was totally unexpected. We had an immigrant that came from Austria-Hungary, and he was my great-great-grandfather. Well, my husband, who's been a great partner in doing family research, he was looking around and he found this paper cut. So the paper cut is a tradition. If you go to, say, the Jewish Museum in New York, you'll see examples of these. This was like a leisure activity for wealthy Jewish men, primarily. This is called a mizrah, that's what it says in Hebrew in the center. Isaac Mizrahi, that's the same word, root. It means east. And this would be framed and hung in a house, in a room facing east towards Jerusalem. You would do your daily morning prayers facing Jerusalem. I told you how to do it, where to go. So what's unusual about this, extremely unusual about this, is its sign. There's an A and an H, and that is Aaron Hochhauser. So Aaron Hochhauser was my immigrant's brother, and the date on this is 1878, the same year the immigrant came to the United States. So my theory is, and I think it's pretty sound, is that this was a gift from his brother, to the New World, because they would never see each other again. Because that was a very long trip, and we would never see each other again. So, and you can recognize these animals in in this print that I've made, reproduced a few times, and I'm using some of the same imagery. And this is very traditional imagery that you would see in Jewish books and on Torah covers and that kind of thing. It's because, like Islamic culture, we did not use what was called the graven image of a person. That would not, that was not allowed. So you would have these floral and animal imageries. Now, going back to my husband's family, so I have these objects that are in the 1790s, and we know that there were Southern roots. And we know that there's a name that's continued in the family at least to the last generation as a middle name, and the name was Sane. So why is that there? Why do we have this name, and who owned these objects? So in our research, we finally figured out who Lassane was. He was a Huguenot who was escaping religious persecution in Catholic France. He's probably just barely got out of his life. And so he comes to, he's a cooper, and he comes to the colonies, to South Carolina, gets a nice land grant, and what does he do? He starts buying slaves from Sierra Leone. That doesn't seem like a very nice thing for someone escaping religious persecution, but that's what he did. And that was, of course, that was the economic model. And they were getting, the slaves they wanted were very specific. They wanted slaves from Sierra Leone because they knew how to grow rice and they knew how to grow indigo. He was a cooper, he didn't know how to do it. So they would purchase these workers, of course against their will, but they knew that they had certain skill sets. So this is a print that I've made that's in the other room. And one of the things in my research that I found was, let's say, probably about 10 runaway slave ads from this family, Isaac Lassane, and these old-fashioned things that look like F's are actually S's. And you see this guy is named Cork. The very earliest ad appears in 1734. But one of the things about these newspapers is they had columns, and these illustrations here, this is not like, the New York Times here, this would have been like maybe half an inch high. But you put this illustration in your ad so it would attract some attention as opposed to the person who didn't pay for an illustration. And you can see he's described, he has a name, he's described physically, and you'll get $4 reward. Now $4 before the American Revolution, it would have been in shillings, not pounds, but in shillings. So this one we know is after the Revolution. And these are all actual illustrations, like I said, like thumbnail, 1/4 of an inch, and I made them into larger images and added some landscape to them and put them together in a way that made sense to me. They're going in one direction this way, another direction going in the other direction, alternating. And I also added hunting dogs from my old imagery onto this. Now, later, in the family history of my husband, this is Nana, Dorothy Tate. She was the last generation, really, who had this sort of privileged lifestyle that came out of this southern culture. And she could write, if you're a poet, perfect iambic pentameter. This is one of her poems. She went to Smith College. She was, very well educated. And and I knew her. She was an absolutely lovely person. But, she never told us anything about any of this either. And here they are. This is Dorothy on the right. Oops. This is Dorothy on the right with her daughter Pam, who was my mother-in-law. And this is Dorothy Tate's father. And he moved up north from Norfolk, Virginia. So, the family was in South Carolina eventually to Norfolk, Virginia. He was able to retire at the age of 40. And yes, raise your hand if you've heard the term putting on the Ritz. Yeah, this is what putting on the Ritz looks like, okay? This is 1930. You can see he's wearing his straw boaters, linen suit, he's carrying a silver-top cane, white spats. I mean, this is living, okay, in New York City. In the 1930s, when, people were certainly not, most people were not living that lifestyle. This is my mother-in-law on the left and her sister, and I love this picture. They're wearing matching dresses and they're playing tea, because it's coming out of this long history of, I think, gentility. And these two ladies really, that middle-class lives, they were really kind of at the tail end of this sort of privileged lifestyle. But this is one of the inspirations for a print that you see in the next room. And this was this young lady here, Pamela, This is her wedding dress that I found up in the attic from 1952, and that's, I believe, her christening dress. And I first presented, that's why I call this, you know, a installation in progress, because I first showed this installation in this way, you know, before I printed any wallpaper or any another dress. This is how it started. And this is my mother-in-law wearing that gorgeous dress. And I can tell you, she only had 4 people at her wedding. My mother insisted that she have this dress. And this is a designer dress. This is a gorgeous dress. I mean, you know, I've really looked at how it's made. It's incredible. And then we go to my family, and so this is the early 1930s, I would say. And this is my family, my mother's family, who lived near Prague. And you can, well, no, I'm sorry, they were living in a Pale in Poland, this part of the world. And, we'll go back to that, sorry. So this woman, and this woman, so this is actually my great-grandmother who I never met, and these are my great-aunts. Now, that's not very far removed from me. This is her husband who was killed in a pogrom. I don't know if you know what pogrom is, but the Cossacks would come and round up Jewish men primarily, rape the women, and you know, so he's here burned into this photograph, you know, as a memory. And this fellow here, he got to emigrate to the United States, but the women, they were not as, you know, valued, or you know, they weren't brought over to the States. So they were in Europe in the, you know, late 30s, and they died. Actually, they died, I believe, in 1944, pretty late, and they went straight to Auschwitz. So, so that's their story. So I'm using here, you know, just to pay homage to them and some of these objects, ritual objects. And this is the other side of my family, the immigrant. This is the paper cutter's brother. Came to the United States. He opened up a textile business. You see, I love how all the girls, there are 5 girls, you know, all dressed in matching dresses, so that must have been what he made, I would assume. And they did very well for themselves, but they came in, you know, a couple generations before my mother's family. And the dress that you see in there with the black jacket over it, this is me wearing that dress. This is my daughter wearing the dress. And my sister also wore this dress. Everybody wanted to wear this dress, a classic dress. And I said to my daughter, it's going to become art now. We're going to retire the dress. So that's what happened. And so, you know, I really, it's almost unrecognizable, but, you know, there's lots of symbolism of, you know, the stars of David the Jews had to wear. This is my great-grandmother's necklace that my grandmother gave to me. This is a German jacket my mother owned. This dress, this part of the dress I ripped apart. This is my grandmother's. And so there's just lots of, you know, layers of family clothing that I have. And this is me. If you wonder how these prints are made. So in this case, it's a linoleum block, and I'm inking up here. And you can see the print behind me. I only have like 7.5-foot high ceilings in my studio, so they're just sort of laying on the ground. So really, partially, seeing them here hung the way they're meant to be hung is the first time I've seen them, you know, in their full glory. And then over here, this is how they're actually made. Is I'm just using a wooden spoon, and I'm just rubbing against the ink blocks. And here you can see how they end up. And I'm layering sometimes with wood cuts and sometimes with stenciling. But you know, that's a lot of rubbing with a wooden spoon, I can tell you that. So, and this is what it looked like in my studio. So you can see, my studio, you know, the dresses are hung pretty much right at the ceiling. So it's really wonderful to have this opportunity to see it how the way I imagine. And this, beneath each of the dresses, I'm using brass and copper underneath the European dress on my mother's side, and then I'm using, sort of pushing the idea of privilege with silver underneath my mother-in-law's dress. And this is a plate that they owned, the family owned. I'm sending a mistake here. Sorry. Sorry. Go back. She's going to make it all better. Okay. Okay, and so this was a plate that they owned, and I love this plate. It's a French China from France with the hunting dog. I mean, what could be more, ridiculously privileged than that? And so I want to end with this because I keep discovering, my husband and I continue to research and we keep discovering things. This is, the name Holocaust, you see it right there, hers, which is like Hirsch and Helena and Adriana, and then there's another daughter. When my husband and I were in Prague in November, they have a Jewish quarter there, which is, really more of a museum. There aren't any Jews that live there anymore, of course. And this synagogue had been, everything was out of the, there were no pews or anything like that. All the walls just have names of local families that were murdered in the Holocaust. And I took a picture of this and thought, it must be distant relatives. It's some kind of unusual name. Hochhausen means high house. And we only found out this last week, like a week or so, through a new database that's been made available, a Czech database. And it turns out, how ironic is this, that this man, Hirsch, and his family, a 15-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old daughter, Hirsch is the son of the paper cutter. And this made me really, really sad. They were murdered in Riga, and I don't want to get into the details, I'm sure I don't want you to lose sleep tonight about it, but it was pretty awful. And, when these names are anonymous, and it's like, there were slaves in Louisiana or whatever, or there were, Jews that died in Auschwitz, it becomes really, really personal when you realize it's your family and you flesh them out and you know who they are and you know what they did for a living and you know in some cases what they looked like. I mean, we have the passport of this Hirsch. And, so that's sort of the ending of the research continues. So that's the end of my talk. So thank you very much for indulging me. Anyone have a question? No? Okay, there's one. Okay.
On your wedding dress.
Right.
The jacket.
Yes.
And there's a little green.
Oh, yeah, they look green. Well, I was thinking of them just as bodies. There's just a lot of missing people, and that's what it symbolizes for me. So, yeah. And that German jacket was what my mother actually did take us all to Germany in high school, which I can't imagine why she did that. And we went to Dachau. She did want us to know, but we didn't know anything specific. I mean, I never knew about these, great aunts that died. I never knew anything specific about it. Yes?
On the same dress,
Yes.
you've got one, votes for women.
Yes,
Suffragette on that side.
that's right. Now, I was thinking about Dorothy Tate, who was at Smith, in the 1920s, and since she was an educated woman, I'm assuming that she was involved in that. Again, never spoken about, but she was there, and that's what women were talking about, right? So that's the artistic license, imagining what they might have been doing. Any other questions? All right. Oh, yes, go ahead.
It's not a question, it's
Mhm.
a comment,
Okay.
but I don't think I felt very much at home
Mhm.
in the display of the event.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Did you have another question?
Do you communicate with your ancestors?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you communicate with your ancestors?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, I will tell you, I really lost a total night's sleep when I found out about, this recent thing that we discovered. But yeah, I do feel like I have a sense of who the Lasanes are. I mean, we were only touching on the research that we did. We went down to South Carolina, we went to the Huguenot church, we went to visit the family cemetery where the Lasanes lived on Daniel Island in South Carolina. So I think when you do that depth of research, you do feel like, you know them. So, yeah, certainly. I don't know if I'd know them if I walked into them, but I know something about them, absolutely. We know very little, of course, about women because they weren't documented very well, in terms of their wills and that kind of thing. So I just kind of have to imagine. Yes?
It's obvious that you have a very strong connection to what you found out in the
Right.
story of these artifacts.
Mhm.
How do you think your descendants are going to react to them?
Well, that's a good question. I can tell you that my daughter is in serious training. I drive her everything I do. So, yes, and I think that my sister-in-law, I'm hoping, is also imparting some of these things. I share all the research we both do with our siblings, and we want them to be part of it too, absolutely. And we feel like we're just caretakers. These are not ours to sell or anything like that. It's just, pass it through to the next generation. Yes?
I'm curious how much further you're going to take this project.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, I have another dress that I'm working on, and my sister-in-law, my youngest sister-in-law, gave me her dress. This is very ironic because she married a guy that she met at University of Virginia. She was a doctoral student. He was a postdoc from Australia. And, he came to the U.S. basically to get a wife. She knew that. And she lives in Australia, and I have Australian nephews. But when I met her husband, I started talking to him, and pretty quickly I said, Becky, can I talk to you in the other room? And I said, he's Jewish. He's from the same part of the world, so what is going on here with this family that, is forming these unions? I mean, they're all very nice people, but it's like they almost seem to be magnetically attracted to this opposite, upbringing or history. So we've been starting to research their family, and it's a part of the diaspora of Jewish families that move around the world, even to Australia. Yes.
Are all of the objects under the dresses family objects or other things?
Some of them are, but certainly I've taken some artistic license. I mean, I have friends that knew what I was doing and would give me things, neighbors would give me things. I went to garage sales, but some of them are, yes. Anything else? Well, thank you so much for coming.